Humans, we're a strange lot, aren't we? Have you ever been eclipsed by someone? It can be annoying, can't it? I've had it many times, going and seeing gigs, and a celestial body comes across and obscures my view by standing between me and the stage and making me unable to see what's going on. I suppose technically it's the stage that's eclipsed because an eclipse is a perspective thing. It's all in the eye of the observer. When something blocks out the view that we have of the object behind the eclipsing thing. As a metaphor, we might describe a person or an event as having been eclipsed when something new comes along and makes the previous thing seem less important somehow, or less significant, less noticeable by comparison to this new thing. This diminishes the previous thing by overshadowing it or obscuring our view of it in some way. The reason I mention this is because I heard it used a few days ago, and it was a thorny phrase that caught the sleeve of my attention, and it really snagged my cuff. We live in eclipsing times, often fueled by a media obsessed with sensationalizing and hyping everything so that there's some kind of historic and unprecedented meaning behind it, often distracting us from the joy of the moment itself. The particular thorn that caught my sleeve on this occasion was on BBC Radio 4's Broadcasting House programme, the morning of the Women's Euro 2025 final, which England went on to win. They won that game, they won the tournament, which is a remarkable achievement, and it made for some very compelling and enjoyable viewing, especially as they lost the first game of the tournament in the group stage and then had to come from a goal behind in all three of the knockout games. Just demonstrated some really impressive will and determination. And I'm a huge fan of sport. I love the twists and turns and stories that can emerge. I'm a sucker for a good underdog defying the odds, whatever those odds are and whoever is involved. And I also love stories of commitment and dedication from those who really give themselves to their passion, regardless of the plaudits and awards and recognition that they might receive. This isn't just true in sport, it's in every walk of life. I love it when people recognize that they are standing on the shoulders of giants in the bigger story, shoulder to shoulder with those who have paved the way rather than, trying to outshine or eclipse. So the sleeve catching thorn was this clip.
Deborah, we will ask you to end our review with coverage of the Lionesses from the Sunday Telegraph.
Yes, this is so exciting. The captain of the Lionesses, Leah Williamson, is ready to eclipse Bobby Moore because tonight she could lift a second major trophy.
I can't wait, actually. 2 games that we won out of the jaws of defeat. Surely we've got to pull this off.
Me, I know nothing about football, but will she really eclipse Bobby Moore?
Yes.
Really? Yes.
Will she?
Yeah, because she'll have held up a cup twice.
Oh, wow, okay.
Now, on the surface, it's obviously just a bit of silly, overreaching media hype, isn't it? And looking at the Daily Telegraph's general approach to news reporting, they kind of love to generate some outrage in their readers for clicks. And while a big part of me just says, yeah, just roll your eyes and move on, especially to those who they are hoping to outrage with this kind of language, there is another part of me that has seen the division that these kinds of comments always seem to sow, compounded by a slight irony that I noticed with Deborah Frances-White, who was the guest talking about Leah Williamson eclipsing Bobby Moore as the most successful England football captain, being the author of a book called 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, How to Change Minds, Including Your Own. And there's a quote from Gillian Anderson on the front of the book, which says, "This is an essential guide for fostering nuanced conversations in today's polarized society." To my mind, the moment we start talking about one person eclipsing another in this way, especially in the fractious context of comparing women's football to men's, which is a tedious bore fest at the best of times, it does the opposite of fostering nuance and helping us navigate and move beyond this kind of polarization that we see around us. Rather, this childish and knowingly provocative stance reinforces this divided status quo, which we see in the comments below articles like that and all over social media. And these kinds of commentaries are written in that way because of the comments, not despite them. You know, reactions are predictable and profitable for those writing the headlines and speaking the words in this kind of way. And perhaps most frustratingly, it's a narrative generally created and peddled by those on the outside. And when we do this, we objectify those humans doing amazing things, making them props in our own comparison games. And as such, it's those playing the game that actually receive the brunt of the pushback and the abuse. For example, it sets up someone like Leah Williamson, who's become an inspiration to millions and a massive star in British sport, to be a target of those who are deliberately provoked to a point of outrage at these comparisons with someone like Bobby Moore. It's not Leah herself doing that. And at a time when social media abuse against public figures is so rife and so destructive and harmful, there is a responsibility for those in the media to speak with integrity and care, rather than stoking the fires and stirring the emotional volatility further. So can we find a new approach to talking and writing about achievements that doesn't require this kind of eclipsing of another person, another group, another experience? You know, we've all spent time with the person who loves to one-up everyone else's stories or employ a bit of whataboutery to undermine anything that anybody else is saying. Do we willingly invite them along next time? Are we happy about the fact they're coming along? Do we enjoy hanging out with them? You know, it's evidently not a great approach to building human connection. I was talking to a friend recently about the band Radiohead, and we were talking about our relationship with their music over the years. And he said, you know, he really disliked them growing up. But he realised that the reason for that was because someone he went to school with, who he didn't particularly like, absolutely loved Radiohead and talked about them in a way that kind of grated hard. So he made a point to not like the band. There was this association that had been created. We react to a whole slew of social triggers that make no rational sense. You know, I've had it with comedies. When the wrong person tells me, oh, you've got to watch this, it's like the funniest thing ever, you'd find it hilarious. And I'm like, oh no, sorry, funniest thing ever, but my mind and my body is not going to let me find you funny. As I say, humans, you know, we're strange. We're a strange lot, and I don't count myself out of that. But yeah, this kind of thing is a phase, really, that we go through as we develop, as we mature, as we grow and explore our sense of self-identity by projecting onto other things and using objects around us to kind of build that sense of who we are. You know, when we're kids, I remember those conversations as a teenager about, you know, our favourite bands. And it wasn't enough to just simply say, I really like this band for this reason. We would tether our identity to it, and we would speak with a sense of objective certainty about the fact that, you know, this band is the greatest band in the world. It's the greatest band of all time. And I suppose that's how many of us explore ourselves and learn about ourselves and about the world, and kind of build relationships and a sense of belonging as well. But there's a framework that we ideally grow out of once we realise that, well, history is actually a rich and wondrous tapestry of all sorts of things, and many amazing things, many things that we don't get or don't really connect with, but that other people do, and that's fine. And we are part of that, like, mishmash, hodgepodge story. We're not the end of it, we're not the start of it. We're shoulder to shoulder with it, not eclipsing it or fighting to avoid being eclipsed by other people's interpretation of it or whatever. Yet media outlets seem to tap into that more base level instinct and attempt to drag us into that regressive state of fighting for our own sense of self, because we interpret it deep down as a story that says, well, by eclipsing my thing with your thing, you're eclipsing me. But if I take a breath and think a little bit more critically about, you know, my reaction to those making these kinds of statements, I can ask, what are they trying to get out of me? What do they want me to feel? Why do they want me to feel that? What are they expecting me to do when I do feel that way? And how do they benefit from my angst, my outrage, or whatever emotion they're trying to evoke in me? And how can I truly subvert their expectations and not give them the pleasure or the profit? You know, we might start to burst the potency of this stuff and mature our approach to navigating a polarized world in more purposeful and creative ways, if we can just put the time between, you know, the stimulus and the response, the thing that we read and the feeling that we have, and then what we do with that feeling. Because I don't know about you, but I find it quite satisfying to let myself critically reflect on things, so I can choose to be indifferent to certain things that people want me to be enraged over, and also to notice and pick up on things that they might hope I'm too clouded by emotion, by anger, by outrage to see clearly. It's like, no, I can see what's going on here. I can see what you're trying to do. So sometimes, rather than actively pushing back and reacting against the bait, the best thing, the most rebellious thing we can do is to sort of just pull a face, shake our head and say, anyway, like, be quiet, as we step off the playing field that person or that outlet or whatever it is trying to drag us onto, trying to force us to play the game within. And if something isn't for us, we can just let it be for others. You know, that's fine. It is nothing personal. It doesn't take anything away from us. We can just go and enjoy what we enjoy instead.